And it's Steve Ray at 8:40 now, Common Sense Time on the John Fredericks Show. Sitting in for John this morning while John is on assignment. Since we've been talking politics all morning, I thought we'd lighten it up a bit. I am very pleased to welcome the gentleman who did not make it into the GQ Men of the Year NASA spread, but he's just as influential as all those guys in the picture. Dave Lavery, the program executive for Solar System Exploration at NASA headquarters, and he is the gentleman who oversees the Mars Curiosity rover, among other things. Good morning, Dave. How are you?
I'm doing great, Steve. Good morning.
Things at NASA really got shaken up the past couple of months. You guys made a great impact with the successful landing of Curiosity on the Red Planet. And a lot of people may have seen this if they had been watching online when there was great enthusiasm at the Jet Propulsion Lab and at NASA headquarters in California when the Curiosity touched down. Just a sense of euphoria. Is there still that sense of euphoria among your crew for the accomplishments that you've made here?
Definitely, but first off, I would like to say that impact is a word that we don't like to use when we talk about landing. That had a bad history for us. But yeah, we definitely do have that sense of just this whole adventure being absolutely amazing. It's worked literally ever since launch about as well as we could ever have hoped for it to work. The sense in particular right at the time of the landing, and part of what everyone saw in all of our faces as we watched the landing actually happen and successfully touch down on the surface, is the fact that the landing itself and the performance of the spacecraft and of the system and the rover and everything else literally worked better than almost any test that we ever ran. We couldn't have scripted it better if we had just been making a movie or something about this. It just works so wonderfully well. And the reality is, ever since then, as we've started to explore the surface of Mars, it's been exactly the same. Things have been working wonderfully with the rover itself, with the machine, but also the science that we've been able to do and what we've been able to discover already has been exactly what we wanted to be able to do.
It's funny you bring up the fact that it couldn't have run better if it had been scripted by Hollywood. And the funny thing is, I know this since I've kind of followed the work along the way, being a friend of yours, that there really are quite a number of rehearsals for each and every stage of the launch, the flight, the landing, and all of the procedures that go into that. And you test almost every variable. Is that correct, before it ever goes up? We
do. We spend, one example is that period between launch and landing when the spacecraft is actually cruising to Mars, that 8 months. We're not just sitting around twiddling our thumbs waiting for things to happen. That we actually use that time for two big purposes. One is actually to finish the software that's on the rover. We actually land with software that's capable of getting us down to the surface, but then the software that we need to actually drive on the surface once we get there, we actually didn't finish until after launch. So we're developing that. But the other thing that we're doing all during that 8 months is we are testing and testing and testing over and over and over again. We actually build not just the rover that we fly, but we actually build two spares that are stuck in labs back on Earth in test beds, and we use them to run through example after example after example of all the different ways things might happen, just so by the time that we get there for real, we've hopefully been through all the different scenarios, both good and bad, that could happen to us, so that we understand what to do. And so when we get there and we do this, as I say, we've rehearsed it so many times, this is not the first time for us. And if something unusual or out of the norm happens along the way, then we already know, we've already practiced how to react to that.
Now, we jokingly said don't use the word impact when talking about a NASA project, and that goes directly to the fact that there was a major difference in how this Mars rover Curiosity was landed as opposed to the previous. Can you tell folks the difference in that?
This one is a wonderful mix of a lot of heritage and a whole bunch of brand new stuff. The way the entire landing system works is we basically hit the top of the Mars atmosphere going about 13,200 miles an hour. And we have the famous 7 minutes of terror, where we have to, in 7 minutes, slow from 13,200 down to zero just above, and hopefully just above and not just below, the Martian surface. And that's done basically through the use of a heat shield and parachute technology that is a combination of new stuff mixed with old designs going all the way back to the Viking missions in the late 1970s. We then actually fall free of the parachute on what's called the descent stage that uses old Viking-era rocket motors that have been upgraded for current use. And as we get down near the surface and we basically start hovering on what's effectively a rocket-propelled helicopter that we call the Sky Crane, which is a brand-new technology, something we've never done before, we sit there and sort of hover on these rocket motors, and the actual rover itself is tucked up underneath the spacecraft, and it's actually lowered on cables the last 25 feet or so down to the Mars surface. The wheels pop out, it touches down, and as soon as it touches down, it senses I'm down safely on the surface. It cuts those descent lines, and the descent stage flies away, and it goes back and it crashes downrange. And you have a rover sitting on the surface on its wheels, all ready to start driving. We don't have to worry about unfolding or climbing off a lander or anything else that we've had to do in prior missions. We are set and ready to go from the moment that we touch down. And that whole scenario is all a brand new thing. The very first time it was done completely end-to-end for real was when we did it on Mars.
Wow. And for those who were watching the online stream or on your NASA channel, if your cable system carries that, you may have seen a little bit of delay in the celebration because you have a bit of a blackout period before you start receiving transmissions again. Is that correct? To verify that everything is actually what you assume it is?
Oh, there's two things going on. One is actually when we're all sitting in that control room, when we and in reality the rest of the world are watching the signals for what's happening, because we're piping it out to the world literally as fast as we get it. Because Earth and Mars are so far apart at that point in their orbits, it actually is taking 14 minutes for those signals to get from Mars back to Earth. So really, we're all watching it on tape delay, in effect.
Wow.
Because it actually happened 14 minutes ago. It's just been taking that time for the signals to get back to Earth and for us to see them. So what we're doing is we're watching this stuff come in, but in reality, it actually happened 14 minutes earlier. And so everything that's going on there is all completely automated and pre-programmed because we can't control it in real time because of the time delay. And so we're all sitting there and watching it. And so there's the delay built in is you start to sit there and realize, yes, I'm seeing the signal for the first time right now, but in reality, this stuff is already over. It's already happened 14 minutes ago. It either landed safely by itself or it didn't, and there's nothing that we can do about it.
It was amazing to watch you and your crew at JPL in Pasadena, California, and especially the gentleman who shaved the stars on the side of his head. All of you, by the way, have become major social media stars. There were YouTube videos and music adaptations and spoofing and all kinds of photoshopping of you guys around the world, which I find to be an amazing phenomenon, besides the fact that you're in the GQ Men of the Year issue. One of the things that has come of this, before we get into the social media aspect of this, of the Mars Curiosity rover, is the fact that you have collected quite a number of both photographic and hard samples from Mars. And last week, which is what prompted me to call you for the interview, there was a collection of what seemed to be traces of minerals that may have suggested that there was life or some kind of a sustainable life form on Mars. Is that correct?
Yeah, the primary mission for the Curiosity rover, the real reason that we sent there, now that we have landed, we actually can start the science that we intended to do. The reason that we sent it there was to look around and evaluate and understand, did Mars ever have an environment, and we have to word this very carefully, we're not looking for life directly, but what we are looking for is to understand, did Mars ever have an environment that was capable of supporting life as we know it? We do know, after the past several missions we've had, that Mars has had a very long, sustained history of water out and exposed on the surface for long periods of time. So a lot of water that was there, and one question is, then where did it go? Because it's not there now. But a lot of water that was there, but was the climate right? Was the geology right? Were the resources and the chemical makeup of the soil and rocks right? So that life could have existed there. And if the environment question turns out to be yes, then we proceed to the next step, which is, okay, now let's actually look for real signs of life. Since the environment was capable of supporting it, we can start to think about where to look for that sort of stuff. So curiosity is asking the environment question. Now, what we have discovered recently, and the announcements are all starting to pop out last week, were one of the instruments on board the rover called SAM, Sample Analysis at Mars instrument, which is built right up at Goddard Space Flight Center in Greenbelt. Mm-hmm. SAM basically has, the rover has the capability of actually scooping up soil and bringing it on board, and SAM actually is inside the body of the rover. We dump soil into SAM, and it does chemical and mineralogical analysis and tells us what's in the soil. And one of the things that it discovered is very small amounts of what appeared to be single carbon organics. Now as soon as you get into the detection of organics, that is one of the potential hallmarks or one of the signs of a life-bearing environment. And so we wanted to be really careful about understanding exactly what we were seeing, and people started to get very, very excited about this. But one of the things that we understand is, because SAM was built here on Earth, we try very hard to clean it and sterilize it and remove all traces of Earth. But it's very possible that we have actually taken some Earth material with us. And so we're being very careful about saying we've detected something, a single carbon organic, but we don't know for sure right now, is that from the Mars sample that we put in the instrument, or is this just some leftover traces of stuff that we brought with us from Earth? And so what we're going to do is we'll do this same experiment over and over and over again, several times over the next upcoming weeks and months. And if the amount of that stuff that we've detected stays the same, then it's a good indication that it came from Mars. If the amount sort of drops off over time, so it's being diluted, that's a good indication that it probably came from Earth. It's just getting scrubbed out of the system. So what you're seeing is science in real time. You're seeing, here's our first discovery. Now, part of what we have to do is go back and verify it over and over and over again, and this is how science works. And so we're sort of bringing the rest of Earth along with us and letting you guys see how we work and how the process works. Here's the first discovery. Now stick with us, and you'll see the rest of the story as it plays out over the next couple of months.
Here on the John Fredericks Show, Common Sense Time is coming up on 8:52. We're speaking to Dave Lavery, the Program Executive for Solar System Exploration at NASA. Steve Ray sitting in for John this morning, by the way. Now, I want to address two things. First of all, the announcement that the next vehicle to head towards Mars is scheduled to launch in 2020. Is that correct? Is this the next step in this program?
We've actually got a couple of missions before that, but that will be the one in 2020 will be the next rover that we send all the way down to the surface. We actually have another mission called MAVEN that will be launching next year, just right in November 2013. It will be an orbiter looking at the upper atmosphere of Mars and trying to understand that. And then we'll be participating in a couple of European-led missions in 2016 and 18. But 2020 is the next time that we are planning right now to go back to the surface. And it's going to be with a rover that will be very similar to Curiosity. It effectively, as much as we can, will be a rebuild to print to be a cost-effective mission for the rover itself. But the thing that will be different is the science payload, the instrumentation that we carry on board. And that is still being thought about, discussion, planned right now, is exactly what that payload is going to be. And it will be an opportunity for the science community to jump in and participate and submit proposals for what instruments they think we ought to fly. But in all likelihood, it will be, assuming Curiosity comes up with the discoveries we think she's going to, this mission in 2020 will be another Curiosity-like rover, but with instruments that should take that next scientific step and say, is there a trace of life that existed on Mars at some time in the past that I can actually find and see and examine?
Now, my second point, I want to talk about the social media phenomenon that really enveloped you guys at NASA and at JPL. I think it goes without saying that the social media phenomenon around the Mars Curiosity rover and the crew and the staff there that you manage at NASA and at JPL, it really has raised the awareness of the space program once again in something we could never have predicted. I mean, the YouTube videos alone were a great phenomenon, and the spread of the photographs that are now being photoshopped with little Martians poking their heads around the side of the rover and saying various things. Is that social media phenomenon, has that helped NASA in its ability to maybe revisit expanding some programs or getting more of a a public backing behind them? Because, let's be honest, for quite a while, NASA's budgets were being slashed here and there.
Well, I think just to the first part of the question, the social media response has been absolutely overwhelming. I mean, we knew that there would be some, and we expected that there would be some, but I think the degree to which it has happened has been way beyond anyone's imagination. It really has been something that has been quite a surprise. And fortunately for us, in this case, a very, very positive one. The thing that has been so much fun is to watch the things like the YouTube videos and the parodies and the sketch jokes and the image generals that just people way outside of NASA are just coming up with on their own.
This is global, isn't it, Dave? Not just here in the U.S.
Is coming from all over the place. And I think some of the very first parody videos that we saw, which were just absolutely wonderfully funny, the first one that I saw happened to come from Canada, and they really are coming from all over. That has been an amazing sign of the amount of public support and interest in the activity that was out there that we didn't have a good way to measure, and we really didn't quite understand just how pervasive the thirst for this sort of thing really was, and how many people got very, very involved with it. And that's wonderful for us, because obviously it's a good sign of support, but it also shows that there really is an interest in what we're doing, and that the sort of stuff that we're able to discover, we're able to find, that we engineer and design, it all has a consumer in terms of the public, in terms of the people who want this stuff. And that's a great, wonderful thing for us to have confirmed. In terms of, is it going to have a real impact on the NASA programs, the NASA budget, and things like that? Directly, it typically doesn't. Indirectly, in terms of letting those people know through the things that they're already doing in other channels that this is stuff that they are interested in, and that may turn into some more downstream support. That is something we'll certainly be looking for in the future. I've got
just under 2 minutes, Dave. Is NASA planning on revisiting the moon?
At this point, one of the things that's actually going on is not only the entire NASA Mars program, but a lot of the human exploration program is currently being restructured and replanned. And certainly return visits to the moon are in the mix. Right now, one of the things that's going on is trying to understand our eventual long-term strategic goal is human to Mars. And the thing that we're working on right now is what's the path that we want to take to get there. And that's all still being worked on right now between the agency, the scientific community, the human exploration community, and both ends of Pennsylvania Avenue, who have a very big say, obviously, in what we do. And returns to the moon as a staging ground for an eventual human mission to Mars certainly are in the mix. We always come back to that point and talk about that. We also have been looking at other options that include going out and just doing what we call the straight away Mars direct sort of mission. Other ones that go to the asteroids first and use that as a stepping stone for the human Mars mission. And so there's several different pathways, none of which have been definitively decided on right now. And we're going to be going through and discussing that question, I think, for a while yet.
Terrific. We've had the pleasure of having the program executive for solar system exploration at NASA, Dave Lavery, on this morning. Dave, thank you so much. I appreciate the time, and I'm glad we kind of got away from politics for a while. It was nice to talk about some of America's successes, and certainly NASA is very much at the top of that list. Have a great week, Dave. I appreciate the time.
Thank you. You too.